Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Kumu. And he offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Massachusetts. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
Yes, and the Highlands has a lot of gorgeous houses.
Okay, and so today you're going to be telling us about the Highlands neighborhood. So tell us about the Highlands and its features.
All right. So, one of the nicest things about Highlands, it starts pretty much with the Holy Cross churches, and that church is gorgeous, of course. That's not the original Holy Cross church, though. The brick structure in front of the Holy Cross is the original church, made in 1902. So Holy Cross is one. Another nice feature of the Highlands is the St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and then the First Congregational Church, and there's also a smaller Methodist Episcopal Church. There's also parks around the Highland. So Kennedy Park, which used to be the Highland School playground, is a nice little feature to go to. And the start of Crafts Hill, or what is called Anniversary Field, starts at the very western edge of the Highlands. They tried to have every neighborhood in Holyoke have at least one park so that people have a place to go. And this Highlands got its gorgeous one. But the biggest feature of all the Highlands is its houses. It became a residential location because the trolley line started going up there in the 1890s, and the people started moving up there, making gorgeous houses. The first homes you see in the Highlands, in fact, were made so that people would see them and want to build houses like those. So if you look on the upper edge of Appleton Street and the upper edges of Hampden Street, there's some gorgeous houses, especially right around the Holy Cross Church. And that's what the Highlands really became, a place to move out of the Mill District of Holyoke up into the Highlands to get away from the heat and all the noise and the population, the pollution, and so forth. And it pretty much worked. It developed its core of schools, churches, and stores. It had its transportation system, and it developed what was supposed to be houses.
So historically did the Highlands form?
Okay, now, if you look at development, sure, there were a few houses up there. There was the old Chapin House from the late 1700s, and there were other houses like that. But to really call it the Highlands, it was developed by the trolley moving in. I think the trolley went up there around 1892 or so. It was electrified around 1895, and it started pulling people uptown. And what happened was the churches pretty much came soon thereafter. And when you got more churches for each denomination, you started getting more and more people. You had these main thoroughfares develop, especially after about 1910, when you already had the streets there, but in 1910 the cars were very prevalent. You started getting a lot of side streets to develop. And one of the biggest developments was Fairfield Avenue, where on there, I believe there's at least 40 Victorian homes lined both sides of the street. So the history of the Highlands is the history of trying to get away from downtown, and it's also the history of trying to make gorgeous houses for themselves, because Holyoke was a very, very successful place. You could have lots of gorgeous houses being built.
So quickly, before we finish the rest of our interview, we just want to let our listeners know that if you want to find out more any information or want to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org, and there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you are interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat42 4214, and they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for group parties, especially those special occasions or get-togethers, and they're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, how did churches help in the development of the Highlands?
All right. Now, there's 4 churches in the Highlands that you need to talk about. But even before that, there was the First Congregational Church that was built right there where the Lynch School went in. And that was a wooden structure. And that had its own cemetery across the street from itself. Neither of those are still there. So the church started this little village, was in Holyoke. It was the second true village in Holyoke after the Baptist village. So you get this Ireland parish village right up Northampton Street. And that core of the village is right around where the Lynch School would go in. Now, at the end of that same century, the 1800s, you started having the Catholics want their own church in the Highlands. And so St. Jerome's Church and Parish wanted to expand. And so in 1902, they expanded from their base upwards into Highlands and started the Holy Cross Church. Also, the First Congregational Church ended up moving in a double move in 1887, 1883 with a chapel and church. And they moved from their wooden structure out to Pleasant Street and built a gorgeous brick structure that is still there. Also, the Methodist Episcopal Church, which was across from the War Memorial Building nowadays, moved and they went up to Lincoln Street at the corner of Nonotuck Street, and they started a Highlands Methodist Episcopal Church. So all these either drew people in there or kept people there. And of course, the more people you get, the more it's going to develop. And so these beautiful churches up there drew the people there and keep the people there.
Now, how can you see this neighborhood changing?
Okay, now there's not much room for change because most of the side streets are packed with houses. It has a lot of institutions already. It has the main drag through the town, Northampton Street. But probably what will happen is that it will change in demographics, that people that have been around Holyoke a long time will die off and it will start to get filled in. And that process is already happening. It's being filled in by people that were based in Northampton or East Hampton, and they want to find lower mortgages on the houses, and it draws in a different type of person. So I wouldn't see a lot of physical change, but I would see a lot of what you would call residential changes or demographic changes. And this trend will probably keep going. Now, one big change has already happened, and that was in the 1960s when the interstate highways came through, and it cut the community, the University Field in half, and it ended up really changing that part. So the Highlands is now, instead of having a big park in every neighborhood, the Highlands is one neighborhood that has only a tiny park, and that's the Kennedy Park. And so that's going to change a lot. They already got a handicap accessible playground set, and there'll probably come more changes around that area.
So thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can also email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Coleman. And he offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Massachusetts. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's right, and sometimes I do share people. That's cool.
So today you're going to be telling us about the Highland Park neighborhoods, right? So how does Joins Point Park fit into the development of the neighborhood?
Yes, the neighborhood wasn't much at all, but Holyoke, the city of, wanted to develop another trolley park. A true definition of a trolley park is it's a park made by the trolley company as a private venture. Mountain Park of Holyoke was a true trolley park. Pequot Park of Westfield was a true trolley park. Now, in Holyoke, there were attempts at other parks done publicly, and what happened was they didn't succeed as much as Mountain Park did. And one of those parks was Jones Point Park. They tried to make a park at the end of a trolley line where people would go and enjoy themselves. And what happened is Pleasant Street was just dirt road. It didn't go further than the Dingle. There was no bridge there, and there was a few houses on the lower part of Pleasant Street, but nothing. But they had the bright idea, say, let's make a big park, and let's make a residential neighborhood out there, and make a trolley line, all for the reason of going to that park or going to those homes. And they built Jones Point Park about 1911, I believe, and they had its own entrances. In fact, there were, I believe, 3 entrances into the park. Maybe 4. Yeah, 4 entrances in the park. 2 from Pleasant Street, 2 from Cleveland Street. And nowadays there's only 1 entrance. What happened? Well, the park did not succeed. People kept going to Mountain Park. They loved it better. It was bigger and more enjoyable. But at Jones Point Park, nothing. In fact, the upper part is now overgrown 100 years later, and you can hardly even figure that it's part of the park. The lower park has changed into recreation, like a baseball field, a little tiny playground, and a tennis court. And all the features they did want never materialized. So there's an upper entrance on Pleasant Street that was for people going to High Rock. There was a lower entrance on Pleasant Street for people going into the upper part of the park on the hill, where people could sit on the hill and relax. That place were now 100-year-old trees all over the place. And then there were the 2 lower ones. One is clogged up with trees. The other one is the main entrance that people go into for recreation. So it did not turn out the way they expected.
Now, how does the Mount Tom Golf Course fit into the development of the neighborhood?
Yes, Mount Tom Golf Course was right on Northampton Street in the beginning, 1898. And it developed along the way. In fact, I do a separate tour along the perimeter of that golf course. And why did it change? Well, the golf course itself changed. They, in 1920, wanted a redesign of the golf course and a neighborhood and put it right into the lower part of it. And they did both very well. The Olmsted family designed a new neighborhood with a set of roads with beautiful landscape on the homes. It somewhat succeeded, but the Great Depression intervened. And then for the golf course, it ended up moving further up. And even nowadays, the course that is called Wyckoff is not really where this moved golf course is. So it changed, but both Jones Point and Mount Tom Golf Course changed the neighborhood. It allowed for more residential homes being put in different areas. They both had separate trolley lines going out there, and then you got these whole some neighborhoods in the neighborhood trying to develop over and over again.
And there he has both videos of the various sites along his tour, and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect and fun for educational and fun outdoor activities for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, how does the Holyoke trolley system fit into the development of the neighborhood?
Right. Now, you got to remember, this is not the Highland. That's a separate neighborhood. This is Highland Park. Now, the trolley went up to the Highlands, and that developed into a very big residential section of Upper Holyoke. But Highland Park includes Jones Point Park. It includes the golf course, and you could almost say that includes a bit of the reservoir, White Street Reservoir. And again, Highland Park is short of the Smiths Ferry neighborhood. So it's a little bitty neighborhood between those two other neighborhoods. How did the trolley system develop? Well, one of the trolleys went up Lincoln Street and took a right to the north and went up Northampton Street until it came to the access road from Mountain Park. And it went in and it went out. But Mountain Park really developed because of this wonderful trolley system. Along the route, it developed homes because why would a contractor look at this transportation system and say, why not build a neighborhood, a street, a set of homes right here? And things like Lexington Avenue, Madison Avenue, Wyckoff Street developed along that route and became a very beautiful neighborhood with gorgeous homes in it. The other trolley line, which was the one that went up Pleasant Street, went up to Jones Point Park and stopped there and returned. So along its way, you find all these homes from the late 1920s and 1930s where they were developed because of this new trolley system being put in. Again, you found developers that said this is a great opportunity. People have a way to get into the city and still live out in a country or rural feel. And so they developed beautiful or gorgeous sub-neighborhoods.
Now, why are some of the most expensive homes in the neighborhood, and what are they?
Okay. The streets that developed along here attracted wealthy people because they wanted to get out of that dirty industrial city that the canal area of Holyoke had. Before, the richer people had to live right down there because there was no cars, no trolley. Cars started coming around, but only one person in the family would have a car, and there'd be big families. So what would you do? You'd move out into this Highland Park Avenue. And what was there were beautiful side streets that had gorgeous homes developed because managers in Holyoke were getting richer and richer. They were an upper middle class. For instance, some of the streets, almost any street north of Fairfield Avenue in Holyoke up to about Wyckoff Avenue in Holyoke is an example. So Cleveland Street, Dartmouth Street, Harvard Street, Yale Street, Madison, and Lexington are some of the streets that developed, and they have gorgeous 1920 homes on them. And later on, after the Depression, after World War II, some of these streets are filled in by 1950s and 60s homes. And if you look past them, you can still see the 1920s grandeur. And it happens all the time. It especially happened when in 1922 they built up the neighborhood that was over on the former Mount Tom Golf Course area, where you had about 7 extremely old homes from 100 years ago, and then a lot of 1950 homes put into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And again, you can check out his website at hoyokecanaltour.org and tune into a large selection of other podcasts and much more. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available.